The secret relationship between King Charles and Camilla once shocked the entire world. They were condemned for shattering a family's happiness, leaving an indelible pain for Princess Diana, the heart of England herself. From the very first whispers of their clandestine affair, the public never stopped criticizing, reminding everyone that this was not just a private matter, but a very public wound in the heart of the royal family. The image of a young prince betrayed, a beautiful and innocent princess left isolated, became a symbol of tragedy and deceit. All of England held its breath at the shocking headlines, the secret photographs, the stories many could hardly believe were true. As time went on, the scandals that seemed buried long ago erupted again in ways no one could have predicted. King Charles, once seen by the public as the betrayer, has now made a tragic yet decisive announcement directly concerning Camilla's future. What makes this moment even more striking is the context in which it occurs. King Charles's health is in serious decline. Close sources reveal he is battling cancer, his body visibly weakened, his strength fading day by day. So why has he chosen this exact moment to make such a monumental decision? Is it a lingering sense of guilt from the past? A quiet remorse over what happened to Diana and the family? Or is it a strategic move to secure power and protect his reputation before his health no longer allows him to lead the monarchy? This choice does more than shape Camilla's future. It exposes simmering conflicts within the royal family, fears and secrets that Charles has worked for years to conceal. Have you ever wondered, if you were in his shoes, knowing your time is limited, what would you do? Remain silent and let things unfold, or make a decisive move, regardless of public criticism, to confront lingering regrets? This is a moment where heart, honor, and power collide, creating a drama unlike anything the royal family has ever seen. Today, we will explore this equally shocking announcement, understand why Charles made this decision, and see the consequences it brings for Camilla, the monarchy, and the public alike. Just moments ago, history seemed to pause. The velvet curtains of Clarence House fluttered faintly as King Charles stepped into the blinding glare of camera flashes. His expression was heavy, his voice quivering as he faced the nation and the world. Then came the words no one expected, the kind that freeze time and ripple through generations. Her Majesty, the Queen Consort, Camilla, is to forfeit her royal title, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. A gasp spread through the gathered pests like wind through dry leaves. The room seemed to tremble with the weight of those words. Never in modern history had a reigning monarch publicly severed such a bond. Not with such finality, not with such pain. Beside him, Queen Mary's crown rested on its pedestal, an ornate relic glinting with the icy fire of Cullinan diamonds and rare gems. Once a proud emblem of unity, it now stood as a silent witness to division. Its brilliance contrasted painfully with the tension that filled the hall. Aides froze mid-breath. One murmured under his breath, "It's done." Outside, where reporters jostled and shouted questions, their voices lost beneath the solemn toll of church bells echoing across London's gray skies. Inside, a royal household was unraveling. The question that burned through the air was simple yet searing. What could drive a king to such a decision? According to whispers from Buckingham Palace insiders, the trigger was not gossip or hearsay, but something tangible, undeniable, a sapphire brooch. Not just any brooch, but one that once belonged to the late Princess Diana. It appeared out of nowhere at a Geneva auction, causing shockwaves through royal circles. How it got there was the mystery until investigators traced its path back to Mill House, Camilla's private residence in Wiltshire. Within hours, a secret intermediary was identified, a figure now reportedly under intense scrutiny by palace investigators. It was Princess Anne who first raised the alarm, her instincts as sharp as ever. Prince William, fierce in loyalty and protective of his mother's memory, demanded answers. And Catherine, calm, dignified, yet resolute, urged her father-in-law to act swiftly. "Protect the crown," she is said to have told him quietly. "No matter the cost, When the moment came, King Charles's hands trembled as he signed the decree. The pen seemed almost too heavy to hold, its ink carrying the weight of centuries of tradition, duty, and heartbreak. His voice, though restrained, carried the echo of ancient resolve. The crown must remain pure, and with that, the unthinkable became real. The British monarchy now stands at a fragile crossroads, dazzling yet fractured, venerable yet shadowed by scandal. What had once been an institution built on loyalty and legacy now finds itself entangled in questions of morality and law. How does a family bound by heritage confront the possibility of betrayal within its own walls? Outside the palace gates, the world watches, fascinated, stunned, perhaps even sympathetic. Inside, corridors that once rang with the measured footsteps of tradition are now filled with uneasy silence. Staff whisper. Advisors convene behind closed doors. The air itself feels heavy with secrets yet to be revealed. Could this be the moment that redefines the royal lineage itself? Could a single jewel, lost, stolen, or sold, unravel the delicate thread of royal continuity? Or is it merely the surface of something deeper? A story of trust broken, of love tested, of history repeating itself in haunting symmetry. To understand this moment, this fracture in the crown, one must look backward. Behind this announcement lies more than scandal. It is a tale of inheritance, of rivalry, of grief and guilt buried beneath the grandeur of monarchy. It is the story of how a sapphire brooch, once a token of affection, became the spark that ignited the most shocking royal reckoning of our time. And so, as the church bells continued to toll and the palace gates remained closed, one truth became clear. This is not just a royal scandal. It is the beginning of a new chapter in a centuries-old saga where loyalty, love, and legacy collide under the shadow of the crown. Was Camilla challenged over the discovery before the king's announcement? What was Camilla's reaction and response when she was confronted? Did she deny it? Let's find out. The confrontation and collapse. On the cold evening of October 11th, the royal palace released a carefully worded statement. Her Majesty the Queen Consort will assist with an internal inquiry regarding the provenance of certain royal heirlooms. It sounded calm and polite, but beneath those few measured words, a storm was brewing within the walls of power. At Clarence House, the usual calm of ceremony gave way to confrontation. The Maple Room, known for its polished mahogany table and gilded portraits, had once hosted rehearsals for the king's coronation speech. But that night it was no stage for celebration. It was a courtroom. King Charles sat at the head of the table, his face set in weary resolve. To his right sat Princess Anne, her expression sharp as glass. To his left, Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, both solemn and tense. And at the far end sat Camilla, her face pale, her trademark pearls replaced by a simple gold chain, the kind of change that spoke louder than words. The silence was suffocating until Camilla finally broke it, her voice trembling, but steady. "You all think I stole something," she said. Her eyes darted toward Charles. "Do you think I stole her?" The meaning was unmistakable. Her referred to Diana, the ghost that still lingered in every royal corridor. Charles's reply came slowly, his voice cracked with strain. "It's not about her," he said. "It's about the crown and what people believe." He slid a thick folder across the table. On the front was stamped, "Confidential." On the inside were papers, photographs, signatures, the kind of evidence that could not easily be dismissed. "These," Anne said flatly, "speak for themselves." Camilla's lips trembled. "These were not my orders," she said, her voice catching. William leaned forward, his tone calm but edged with steel. "Then say whose they were, because silence, stepmother or not, will cause more damage than any scandal." For a moment, only the slow ticking of the wall clock filled the room. Charles leaned back, eyes heavy. "Whoever signed it," he said at last, "no longer matters. Ambiguity is poison to the crown." His words fell like a verdict. Behind him, through the glass case, The imperial state crown shimmered faintly under the chandelier, half in light, half in shadow, as if judging them all. Camilla's mask began to crack. Her voice rose, breaking through the formality that had once defined her life. Do you think I wanted this? This life? This burden? I rebuilt it for this family, for this crown. And now I am being destroyed for something I may never have even ordered. Anne met her eyes coldly. No one's destroying you, she said. But trust, once lost, rarely returns. Catherine spoke next, her voice soft but cutting. These jewels are not just ornaments, she said. They carry stories, memories. When one disappears, a story is erased. And once a story is lost, the crown itself grows dimmer. The clock struck midnight. A decision was made. The Privy Council would convene at dawn. Camilla would be asked, politely but firmly, to relinquish her title. Her reign as queen consort was over before the morning sun would rise. Charles remained in the maple room long after the others had gone. He stared at the glass case that held the crown. Centuries of power and pain sealed within it. His whisper filled the emptiness. The crown endures. Hours later, Camilla's carriage rolled through the dark countryside toward Mill House. The night outside was silent, save for the rhythmic sound of wheels on gravel. When she arrived, she walked into her quiet room and found a photograph from her coronation. She and Charles smiling, her crown tilted just slightly. She looked at it for a long moment, then turned it face down. In another part of the city, Anne's voice came through the phone. You did the right thing, she told her brother. Charles paused before answering, his tone low and tired. It won't heal. Anne's reply came softly, like a truth too old to argue with. It wasn't meant to heal, she said. It was meant to protect. And in that silence, heavy, royal, and unending, the crown once again stood untouched. How did Prince William get to know about the theft? What was the evidence that implicated Camilla? Let's delve into the details of the discovery that resulted in the king's tragic announcement. When heirlooms turned to evidence, in the crisp golden days of early autumn 2025, the royal household was a hive of preparation. The long-awaited Heritage Gala was only weeks away, a glittering night meant to honor Britain's grand past and celebrate its monarchy. Seamstresses worked late into the night, jewelers polished heirlooms steeped in history, and the palace halls buzzed with talk of gowns, guest lists, and royal appearances. At the heart of it all stood Queen Camilla, chosen to wear Queen Mary's crown along with a dazzling assortment of jewels once belonging to Queen Elizabeth II and the late Princess Diana. The newspapers praised the symbolism, a union of legacies. They called it, to the public, it was elegance, heritage, and harmony woven into one royal night. But within palace walls, beneath the shimmer of diamonds and decorum, something darker began to stir. The celebration would soon ignite a scandal no one could contain. It began quietly, as most storms do, with a whisper. A rare sapphire brooch, strikingly similar to one Diana had worn, appeared at a discreet auction house in Geneva. At first, it seemed a coincidence, but jewel collectors, always sharp-eyed, noticed peculiar details. A tiny engraving on the clasp. D. 1981, Diana's personal mark. Experts confirmed it was authentic, a piece thought to be safely stored in the Royal Collection Trust, untouchable and accounted for. So, how had it ended up across the channel in a private auction room? The discovery sent quiet tremors through the palace. Internally, chaos brewed, the trail of ownership, traced through confidential shipping papers and a coded invoice, led back to Mill House, Camilla's private estate. The palace's press office scrambled to craft explanations, a misunderstanding, they insisted, a misattribution. But Princess Anne, never one to be deceived by polite lies, was unconvinced. She demanded an official audit of the Royal Jewelry Registry, the meticulous log that tracked every gem, crown, and heirloom ever held by the family. When the audit arrived, the findings were more than alarming. They were devastating. Several documents were missing. Some transfer forms had been altered. A few valuation notes bore initials unmistakably resembling CP, Camilla. The palace corridors, once echoing with rehearsals for the gala, now hummed with whispers of betrayal. For Prince William and Catherine, it became a moral battlefield. They were torn between loyalty to the monarchy and loyalty to memory, to Diana's legacy. One evening, under the polite pretense of a family dinner, they visited Clarence's house, but the warmth of kinship never arrived. The room felt heavy, the air tense with unspoken truths. William broke the silence. "Mother's memory is not a commodity," he said, voice steady but strained. Across the table, Camilla's expression barely shifted. Catherine, ever calm, added softly, "A crown gleams brightest when it's honest." The words lingered in the air, cutting deeper than confrontation. In the days that followed, the jewels, once symbols of pride and continuity, became evidence. They were no longer ornaments, but testimonies of greed, of secrecy, of wounds never fully healed. Behind closed doors, Charles was livid yet restrained. With his usual reserve, he drafted a letter to the Geneva auction house, brief and cold. What returned was confirmation that shattered the facade of unity. The sapphire brooch was real. The paperwork traced back not to a clerical error, but to a deliberate private sale. Within the palace, trust fractured. Long-held resentments resurfaced. The Heritage Gala, meant to celebrate the monarchy's legacy, now threatened to expose its hidden fractures and fragile loyalties. The night that was supposed to dazzle the world with royal grandeur was now shadowed by scandal. Beneath the polished crowns and rehearsed smiles, the royal family faced an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the brightest jewels conceal the darkest betrayals. How did King Charles discover the foul play? How did the staff feel and react to the signs as they evolved? Let's dive further into the details of how the foul play was uncovered. Shadows within royal corridors. As October drew near, a strange unease settled over the palace, the kind that creeps in quietly but lingers heavily in the air. Even the staff felt it, though no one dared to speak openly. Something was changing, though no one could quite name it. The first sign came when the Royal Jewel Registry, a sacred record of the monarchy's treasures long kept safe within the tower, was suddenly transferred to Clarence's house for a private audit. There was no official statement, no explanation, just silence. But those familiar with royal tradition knew what it meant. In the palace, when the jewels move, something much deeper is shifting, something within the family itself. In the Lancaster room, advisors gathered in quiet clusters, their voices barely above whispers. A document from Geneva confirmed what many feared. The brooch in question was authentic, and the buyer's trail led straight to Mill House, Camilla's private residence. When the king received the dossier, he sat still for a long time, reading it once, twice, then a third time, as though hoping the words might change. Finally, he murmured only two words: "Not again." They carried the weight of old wounds, memories of loss, betrayal, and the shadows of the past that refused to fade. For years, rumors had swirled around Camilla's jewelry, whispers of pearl chokers worn too soon after Diana's death, stories of missing heirlooms that quietly reappeared without explanation. Most had dismissed them as gossip, the kind of stories tabloids feasted on, but this time it wasn't a rumor. It was a fact. The evidence was precise, cold, and undeniable. Princess Anne was the first to confront her brother. She stormed into Clarence's house, her voice sharp and steady. "You cannot hide this." The king said nothing. His silence spoke louder than any defense. Meanwhile, William and Catherine were already preparing for what might come. Together, they drafted a confidential document called the Integrity Paper, a detailed plan for how the royal family would respond if the story reached the public. Catherine's notes, written neatly in the margins, softened the document's tone. One aide watching her later described her as the calm in the storm. Late one night, A palace staffer entered one of the gallery rooms and found Queen Camilla standing alone before Queen Mary's crown, her reflection shimmering faintly in the glass. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked, "Will they take it from me?" The staffer didn't answer. They quietly stepped away. By dawn, the final report from Geneva arrived. The findings were clear. The brooch had been sold with Camilla's personal authorization. There was no room left for doubt. Whether it was an oversight or something deliberate no longer mattered. Perception had become reality. At breakfast, William broke the silence that had settled over the family. "You always said the crown is for the people," he told his father. "Show them now." The king lifted his eyes slowly. "The crown also belongs to history," he replied, "and history remembers." Later that day, Anne and William met with Charles once more, presenting the evidence formally. Catherine was there, too, calm, composed, dressed in a soft cream outfit, the sapphire ring that once belonged to Diana glinting faintly on her finger. The atmosphere was thick with tension and unspoken emotion. The meeting ended without resolution, though one conclusion was clear. Camilla must appear before the Privy Council. Outside the palace gates, rumors raced through the press like wildfire. Inside, silence hung heavier than ever. Every corridor seemed to hum with unease. Every glance carried hidden meaning. The monarchy, so careful to preserve its dignity, now stood on the edge of a quiet but dangerous reckoning, one that could alter not only its image, but its very legacy. And though the palace appeared still from the outside, within its walls, nothing was truly still anymore. Have there been similar or more complex cases of royal theft? Could King Charles's discoveries suggest that royal thefts are usually insider-assisted? Let's dig into the details of one of the most recent royal robberies in Paris, the daylight robbery that stole history. When people hear the phrase royal robbery, their minds often paint cinematic images: masked men sneaking through moonlit corridors, guards lulled to sleep, alarms quietly disabled. But what unfolded in Paris recently shattered that familiar script. This wasn't a stealthy after-hours operation. It was a bold, almost theatrical act of daylight thievery that stunned onlookers and sent ripples through the global art and heritage community. On a crisp November morning, visitors to the elegant Musée Cognac J, tucked in the heart of Paris's historic Marais district, expected an ordinary day of quiet admiration: delicate porcelain, oil paintings, and relics from a bygone aristocracy. Instead, they found themselves witnesses to an audacious heist that seemed pulled from a high-budget movie scene. At midday on November 20th, four masked men stormed into the Paris Museum, not with finesse, but brute force, armed with axes and bats. They shattered glass cases as horrified visitors looked on. Their actions were swift and deliberate. Within minutes, the thieves vanished into the city's winding streets on scooters, leaving behind chaos and disbelief. Their prize, 7 priceless artworks, including 2 royal snuff boxes once owned by King George V and Queen Mary, relics steeped in British history, loaned by the Royal Collection Trust. Their loss cut deeper than money. It was a wound to culture and heritage itself. News outlets described the heist's chilling precision. The robbers' intimate knowledge of the museum's layout and security baffled investigators. It was not random theft, but a carefully choreographed strike, a modern echo of old-world plunder, where elegance and audacity collided beneath Parisian skies. As the news spread, shock turned into outrage and fascination. Social media buzzed with disbelief. How could something like this happen in broad daylight in one of Europe's most art-protected cities? Heritage lovers and museum officials lamented the loss, describing the theft as not only a crime against property, but against history itself. The Musée Cognac J, known for housing an exceptional collection of 18th century art and artifacts, suddenly became the scene of an international manhunt. French authorities, joined by global art crime investigators, began combing through security footage and tracing every possible lead. Scooters darting away in the afternoon sun became the last visible clue in what might soon join the ranks of Europe's most daring cultural thefts. The audacity of the act left everyone stunned. Unlike thieves who melt into the shadows, these men chose the spotlight. They seemed to thrive on the very brazenness of their approach. A daylight raid on royal artifacts executed in a public space surrounded by witnesses. It was a statement as much as a crime, one that questioned how secure even the most prestigious museums truly are. And yet, beneath the shock and spectacle, there lingers a deeper sadness, a reminder that art, no matter how revered, is vulnerable. The snuff boxes of King George V and Queen Mary, once symbols of refined taste and royal intimacy, now exist in uncertainty. Their delicate craftsmanship and historical weight have been reduced to commodities, stripped from the narratives they help tell. As investigations continue, the world waits, not just for justice, but for restoration. Because what was stolen that day wasn't just gold, enamel, or antique beauty. It was a piece of shared human memory, a fragile link between past and present, now lost to the shadows of greed and daring. In the end, this wasn't merely a robbery. It was a story of audacity, loss, and the haunting realization that even the relics of royalty are not beyond the reach of human ambition. So, how was the atmosphere like when Charles was making his announcement? What was Camilla's reaction like? How did the public react to the development? Let's find out. Dawn of reckoning. Morning came cold. October 13th dawned metallic and stern. Reporters lined the gates. Cameras aimed like spears. At exactly 10 a.m., King Charles entered the Grand Hall. He was drawn, dignified, bearing decades in silence. Queen Mary's crown stood beside him, gleaming in the spotlight. In the hall were officials, press, and family. William stood directly behind his father, Catherine to his side, composed. Anne lingered, head bowed. The air felt like a funeral for a title. When Charles spoke, his voice was steady yet heavy. With profound sadness, I confirm a decision not made lightly. The crown must remain above reproach. Her Majesty, the Queen Consort, Camilla, hereby withdraws from all duties and relinquishes her title. Silence swallowed the room. Then, as though gravity itself shifted, he continued. This decision arises not from anger, but preservation. The crown is more than gems. It is trust between sovereign and people. That trust must never be broken. In that silence, electrified, trembling, cameras flashed like lightning. The world seized the moment. Outside, crowds murmured in awe and shock. Some cheered, others wept. Portraits of Diana surfaced. Floral tributes appeared at Kensington's gates. Lilies, notes, even a small replica sapphire brooch. Charles paused. He turned to William. It is time. William stepped forward, placing a velvet-bound decree on the lectern, signed by the King and Privy Council. Catherine gently rested her hand on his, steadying. Charles's final line echoed for generations. The strength of the monarchy is not measured by splendor, but by conscience. Then he bowed his head. Anne broke decorum. She moved to stand beside him, placing a gloved hand on his shoulder. The cameras caught it. The gesture became iconic. William escorted Catherine from the hall. They passed through gates under flash bulbs and chants. Long live the Prince and Princess of Wales. Their future, forged in crisis, now gleamed like a new dawn. At Mill House, Camilla watched in silence. The announcement played, her face unreadable. She removed her ring and whispered, "So it ends." Back in Clarence House, Charles walked into the maple room. He hovered before the crown's glass, reaching out but not touching it. His reflection split among diamonds and shadow. He whispered, "Forgive me." 12 tolls of the church bells echoed across London. A reckoning, a catharsis, a rebirth. The world declared the day the crown's reckoning. Love, legacy, and duty collided beneath diamonds that had outlived every heart that wore them. By dusk, London held its breath, neither celebration nor mourning, but something in between. The gilded gates glowed in lamplight as crowds swelled. Inside, the palace knew it had obeyed protocol, but at a cost none could quantify. Charles spent the evening alone in his library. A letter lay before him, sealed, addressed to "my sons." He had rewritten it 3 times before settling on this truth. The jewels of this family are not diamonds. They are honesty, compassion, restraint. Should any of those falter, the crown loses its radiance. He sealed it, closed it, and let the silence settle. At Kensington Palace, William and Catherine prepared for their first public appearance since the storm. Their composure was quiet, their strength muted. Catherine's gray gown caught the evening light. On her wrist lay Queen Elizabeth's pearl bracelet, a symbol of legacy passed onward. William squeezed her hand. Mother would have been proud. For one moment, his smile felt genuine. Meanwhile, Camilla remained sequestered. In her sitting room, she turned off the TV before the closing remarks. She gazed at that coronation photograph. Now face up again. A fragile possibility flickered. Maybe forgiveness, like truth, returns slowly. And so the crown endured, not as a flawless relic, but as something reborn. Its polish tested by crisis, its metal scarred by revelation. Because sometimes legacy is not built in grandeur, but in the courage to look inward and to act, even when everything risks shattering. This is not merely a royal drama. It's a story for us all. How power must dance with principle, how loyalty can become a cage, and how sometimes the greatest reigns are those that start